Have you ever had a time where you thought you knew supply and demand and then someone brought up a particular point that left you just speechless and questioning what you really knew? That happened to me, and it sent me on this rabbit hole of research. Welcome, fellow film economists, where learning economics is as easy as watching a movie. You know, I was doing what most people are doing nowadays, which is I was on a Zoom call with my friends. We were talking about the hand sanitizer guy
who hoarded thousands of bottles of hand sanitizer. They decided they were going to make a tidy profit off of all the demand, so they drove around hoarding all this hand sanitizer. But the Tennessee Attorney General told them to stop because they were trying to price gouge, and the state's not going to stand for it.
And then my friend's husband said, I mean, yeah, that guy was a real piece of crap, but you know what? I just don't feel comfortable because what he did is like supply and demand, dude. Like, I mean, come on. He has something and people want it. And I just don't feel comfortable about the government really getting involved in dictating supply and demand. Now, this came as quite a surprise to me. I mean, after all, I feel like I know a few things about economics, but like, it seemed right, kind of felt right. But you know what? There was something about it that was off. And in fact, I couldn't even fall asleep. It was driving me nuts. And if I was going to stop myself from going crazy, I had to do some research into this. So here's what I found out, a technical definition on Wikipedia. In microeconomics, supply and demand is an economic model of price determination in a market. It postulates that, holding all things equal in a competitive market, the unit price for a particular good or other traded items such as labor or liquid financial assets will vary until it settles at a point where the quantity demanded at the current price will equal the quantity supplied at the current price, resulting in an economic equilibrium for price and quantity transacted. Okay, so what does that mean? In English, all it means is that there's a particular product or service, and depending on how many people want that versus how much of that product or service is available, that's going to determine what the overall price of that product or service is. So supply and demand, there has to be a product, there has to be a demand for the product, there has to be a supply for the product, and that determines what the price is. Okay, so this guy who bought all this hand sanitizer, there was a product. He decided to sell that product. There's a lot of demand for that product. So that seems like it's it, right? Like, I feel like I did my job and it checks out as supply and demand. Like, that's what the issue is. Well, I reread the definition a couple more times and finally something actually stuck out at me. All these things equal in a competitive market. That basically means that this guy can't be the only one supplying hand sanitizer. It has to be competitive market. In other words, he has to have somebody else selling a similar product at a similar quantity so that the price can actually be lowered, because the goal is to hit this market equilibrium. And that's what actually distinguishes this guy's situation from true supply and demand, is that there is no competitive market. And now I'm feeling even more distressed because, after all, I feel like I didn't really find anything out. I'm still kind of left clueless. Sure, I know that it's no longer supply and demand, but what else could this be? So I decided to kick back and decide to watch a movie for a little bit, and I am watching Iron Man 2, you know, going through the whole Marvel series once again. I mean, after all, what else am I going to do in a pandemic? By the time I got to the end of it, I realized that Iron Man, Tony Stark, is in a similar situation as our hand sanitizer guy. Tony has something that people really want in the movie. Justin Hammer wants it, the government wants it, Nick Fury wants it. It's his suit, the Iron Man suit. Tony's the only one who really has it, or he's the only one with a similar product, because other people who are trying to get that product, they aren't being able to create anything that's the same quality or as popular as him. But they all want it because he's helping bring peace to the world, or for other interests like the Avengers initiative that Nick Fury wants. But Tony is setting the price more than just money. You have to be somebody he trusts. You have to be his friend. And quite honestly, that's probably a price too high for most people to pay. And that's really similar to what this guy was doing. And what this is actually showing us isn't necessarily supply and demand. It's actually showing us a quality of monopolies. There are a lot of different characteristics of a monopoly that I'm going to read to you right here. Profit maximizer maximizes profits. Price maker, so they decide what the price is. There are high barriers of entry. Basically, other sellers that try to enter into this market, it's so hard because it costs so much to get in. Single seller and price discrimination, which is basically being able to change the price or the quantity of a product. And if we take a look at our hand sanitizer guy, he kind of checks out on almost all of these. And so does Tony in Iron Man 2. So now I found it. I finally found the thing that matches up with this hand sanitizer guy. But you know what? This whole experience got me thinking. Because Tony Stark is the hero of Iron Man 2. He's not the villain. He's not trying to get the biggest price and maximize his own profits. He just is trying to bring peace. So it really made me start wondering about what's the point of economics? I mean, economics is the study of human behavior. So maybe if we decide that we need to teach economics through a lens of moral good, of doing the right thing, rather than just do what needs to be done to maximize profits, could we possibly change economic outcomes for our entire society? And so I've learned a lot of different things throughout this to shift how I think about economics in general, that it is something that we can kind of shift ourselves, since it is all about us and our own choices that we make. If you want to know what happens to countries who make certain choices, economic choices that can lead to bad behaviors, I have a video on that looks at Black Panther and how one resource can actually destroy an entire country. And you can check that out right up here.